Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Technology Leader Panel Breakthroughs in Warehouse and Logistics Technology, brought to you by Distribution Strategy Group. My name is Ian Heller with Distribution Strategy Group. My guests today, who I'll be bringing into the conversation here in a couple of minutes, are Mike Herter at Infor and Chase Eldridge at Powerfleet. I'm really excited for this discussion. This is really important. There's so much changing right now in this field. So if you're on this call, you're going to be ahead of the game. So welcome. Bring your questions. Make sure you use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to insert your own questions into the conversation to get expert answers from our panelists. Hey, before we start, a couple of business items. One is you need to go sign up for our huge event, Applied AI for Distributors. It's the only major live conference about artificial intelligence for the distribution industry. The only one. This is the place where you get ahead on what's happening with AI for distributors. We've got, I don't know how many we'll have, but probably around 40 or 50 different tech companies there showing their AI-enabled applications. It says 30 here, but that's because we're being conservative. It'll be well over 40. And you can learn how to use AI to boost productivity, improve customer experience, outperform your competition. You're going to see solutions across quoting, pricing, operations, customer service, sales, supply chain, returns, managing cash flow with better AR and AP tools, improving your rebate process. You name it, it's going to be there. There's speed networking with our technology partners. And we got a couple of special workshops you can learn about at our website, appliedaifordistributors.com. So you can go to distributionstrategygroup.com or appliedaifordistributors.com to get more information. I hope you'll join us in Chicago, June 23rd through 25th of next year. Okay, we got a couple of software packages of our own I'd like to tell you about. Customer Experience RX helps you measure Net Promoter Score, but it does so much more. It is like an MRI on your business from your customer's perspective. It gives you detailed feedback that you can slice and dice and parse by customer type, by segment, by job function, by geography, by branch location. And it really gives you the insight so you know not only what your NPS is, but exactly where you need to make changes to improve your customer experience. Employee experience is built on the same architecture. This is an MRI about your business from your employee's perspective. It's equally detailed. And then Demand RX is this incredible program that my business partner, Jonathan Bine, built that helps you estimate sales potential by product line and by account or prospect so that you can direct your salespeople to pursue the best opportunities account by account by account. Nothing like it in the marketplace. Nothing is good, in my opinion. Go to distributionstrategy.com/software to learn more. Okay, let me bring in our guests. I'm so excited to welcome Mike Herter, Vice President of Supply Chain for Infor, and Chase Eldridge, Vice President of Sales for Powerfleet. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. I hope you're doing well. We're really looking forward to this conversation. I hope it's not snowing and you're not snowed in where you are like I am, where I
I'm not. I'm in Atlanta. So
am. You guys just live a few miles apart, by coincidentally, I think, right?
we
Yes,
probably could have gotten together in the same room.
Yeah.
yeah, same county, and if it's snowing in Atlanta, it's not a pretty scene. So
No, you would be stranded even with
that's
just a
where
couple of
it's for you.
inches. Right, right. Hey, we got a great program today, but let's get the audience oriented around who you guys are. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you came up to the positions that you're in today, what you're responsible for today, and then tell us about your companies as it bears on today's discussion topic. Mike, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Well, first, Ian, thank you for bringing this together. I'm excited to be a guest here today and appreciate you and the chance to speak with Chase. And just a few quick things about me. I started my career refreshing AS400s as an intern at a warehouse management software company, probably close to 30 years ago. And back then, our largest competitor was EXE. And in a full circle moment, I have the privilege of leading kind of the go-to-market behind what EXE became over the course of the next 30 years, which through acquisition by SSA and then later by Infor, as warehouse management, supply chain planning goes, I have accountability for kind of how we do in the market. And it's a kind of a fun full circle moment for me. And through that, I've had some fun jobs along the way. I've lived in a couple different continents, and I used to have the job of making sure that when the warehouse was shut down and people introduced too much code and too much process, how do you get that working again? And that was a really hard job. And through time, I earned the right to do something different. And I asked to not do that anymore. So I got to move into I got to move into sales and have found my way here at Infor, which I've really enjoyed over the last year and a half. And for those of you that are not familiar with Infor, Infor is industry cloud complete organization where we take an industry perspective and then we develop our software outward from there. And we cover all of the functions that exist in your business, from ERP into supply chain into couple other surrounding functions. And I just really enjoyed my time here, Ian. Really enjoyed kind of how I got here, and really love the purpose and remit that I have and the work I do every day, and most importantly, the team of people that I have the privilege of working with. So thank you.
Oh, that's great. Awesome. That's good to hear. So Chase, so tell us about your background, how you got to where you are today, what you're responsible for, and give us some background on what Powerfleet does for distributors when it comes to warehouse and logistics technologies.
Great. Thanks, Ian. And thanks again for having our Powerfleet team here. Love DSG and the work that you guys do. Yeah, Chase Eldridge, Powerfleet, VP of Sales. I've been at Powerfleet for about a year and a half. Got about 22 years of kind of varying experience in and around transportation and fleet management. Kind of serviced distributors in all sorts of capacities and angles. Front part of my career was actually in the tire business with a well-known French tire company, Michelin. But anyhow, been in telematics IoT for a better part of the last 5-6 years, and really an interesting part of the tech world. What Powerfleet does, when we're an AI-driven IoT company, so we're a combination of a handful of acquisitions and different entities. And specific with distributors, we give end-to-end visibility and supply chain. So we have solutions for forklifts, and we serve a number of Fortune 500 type clients with our kind of telemetry solutions for in warehouse, as well as over the road all the way to the last mile with dash cameras and that kind of visibility. What we're really proud of is our data ecosystem. We call it our Unity Data Highway. That allows companies to stitch together what were previously separated business processes and stitch them together in a single pane of glass and really unlock efficiencies across their operations. So it's we're about a $400 million company, headquartered in New Jersey with operations in 6 continents, and have been really a kind of a core player with in warehouse solutions for the better part of 3 decades. So look forward to the conversation. Always a good time with the team here at DSG.
Fantastic. Awesome. Okay, so let's jump in. But first, I do want to remind the audience again to get in early with your questions if you have them. Okay, so let's start with this question. This one's directed at both of you. What do you see as the most critical business pressures today that must shape warehouse and logistics technology decisions over the next 5 years? So what do you need to decide today if you are, or what are the pressures? What are the driving forces that are going to shape these decisions for the next 5 years? I don't know. Chase, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, so a handful of things, and I think where you are, you're probably you've got all of these in some form or fashion, and I'd say you got to prioritize what your biggest pains are inside of your organization. The handful of things that we hear the most often from our customers are labor scarcity, skill gaps, rising customer expectations for speed, accuracy, and visibility across supply chain. I mean, if we can't get it, within 2 days, it's a very dissatisfied customer experience, right? Consistent, persistent supply chain volatility is something that a lot of folks are chatting with us about. And something that we're really passionate about that we can help unlock is fragmented technology ecosystems. And I think data is our largest asset. It's also our biggest anchor in holding us back. So I'm sure many of you inside your companies have painful manual processes. There's one legacy process that somebody's still doing with pen and paper or special Excel, Power BI process, whatever. Very, very inefficient. And I think how you choose to optimize, I think is very important, and where you can find efficiencies. Yeah, and continue, of course, with sustainability and energy costs, just always something to watch out for. Mike, what would you add?
Um, you know, I think Amazon did a lot for us from moving from the idea. Like, if I think generationally, I would order something and I would read allow 4 to 6 weeks for delivery. And now I see myself get a little bit impatient if something's not going to come to me in the next couple of hours. And so, where fulfillment went from just something that you kind of had to accept through the ordering process to part of the sale, and almost a balkable moment if you can't get something at the speed that you really want it, and you'll go look somewhere else. It's created an expectation that's really kind of reshaped the way people look at fulfillment, because it's no longer just how do I deliver on what I promised. It's part of the actual decision criteria of purchase. And so as you start to see customer expectations increase, I was shocked when Amazon came out with a 2-day delivery system, and I would order things from planes and they'd be at my house. And now, just in 5-10 years later from that, if I don't have it in a couple of hours, I get frustrated. And so your ability to move goods is part of your sale, and that has become something where supply chain is now, you have CROs weighing in on kind of the movement of goods. The second piece is just labor in general. So if you think about technology that was implemented 25 years ago on an AS400, Gen X was perfectly fine with tapping a few tab keys and hitting F4 and being good with something. And if the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, 36.8, I think, is the average warehouse worker's age. So you're dealing in a millennial and a Gen Z reality in the warehouse. And there's an expectation that technology is going to be something that they want to do. So finding people and getting them to stay is a big challenge too. So technology has become a part of that labor conversation. You've got 38, I think, percent plus in generations behind mine willing to leave a job if the tech's insufficient, and you're offering them the green screen reality that I used to be perfectly okay with 25 years ago. And now when you start to look at how do I find talent, how do I skill them up, and what's going to happen if a better paying operation moves into the area, the war over labor right now is the hardest part, and people not wanting to address some of the technology considerations that comes into job selection. I see that being a pretty big trend right now as well. So I look at expectations. I look at the ability to satisfy those expectations as a function of the labor market, and I look at the redefinition of labor as it's going to move from being a very human operational thing to the marriage of hybrid human and machine as that thing that's kind of informing a lot of people's decisions to make a technology move.
Yeah, it's funny. A few years ago, I needed something immediately for a faucet in my house, and I called a major plumbing distributor, and they couldn't guarantee it would be delivered in 24 hours. So I ordered it from Amazon, and it came in 24 hours from that same plumbing distributor. So they had a different SLA for their Amazon business than for their direct sales. Now, hopefully that's changed. But I think your point about expectations is right, Mike. I mean, our expectations have grown so much. The question is, are distributors keeping up? Is their performance keeping up with the expectations in the market that are no longer defined by distributor performance or defined by the performance of companies like Amazon? So Chase, given these customers' rising expectations, the labor scarcity that you guys mentioned, and volatility in supply chains, how should companies prioritize their technology investments right now?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I'd say prioritize technologies that give you real time visibility. Decision grade insights. I mentioned earlier how everyone is swimming in so much data, so many different systems and platforms. It's very difficult to make sense out of it and really to make decisions. So ultimately, how do we simplify and help you make decisions faster? I think for me, those are the priorities that I see that our customers tend to focus on the most, and where they see the most ROI from their transformation journey, which I'm sure we'll touch on later. But transformation journey is truly a journey; it never ends, and
Right.
it's really you have to constantly evolve, and the pace certainly is accelerating with expectations from the marketplace.
Yeah, we have a listener question. Trey wants to know. So it says, often warehouse and logistics leadership know they have labor issues that technology can solve, but procurement and finance don't give them the resources they need. What advice would you give to encourage the change in the funding of projects? So how do you sell these projects internally? Mike, you want to start with that one?
Has your CFO or procurement team ever walked the warehouse?
Yeah.
So yesterday I was on a really interesting warehouse tour, and the controller gave it to me.
Wow.
And the controller walked me through the warehouse, and he was a gentleman that understood his business. But when your finance organization is in the warehouse, and they're in the warehouse with your procurement organization, and they start to get to the heart of what the actual challenges are in terms of, why do people stay? Why do people leave? Why are people attracted to your organization? And then they start to kind of get a feel for the culture. I've been I was at the National Association of Wholesale Distributors, and there was a gentleman that talked about something as simple as swag. Connecting with people and retaining talent. But when you have executive management that actually understands the heart of that challenge, as opposed to looking at it as kind of a line item that it's going to stay your problem until they understand it. And the only way to understand it is to take a warehouse tour with them and kind of get them there. And if they're not going to do that, I think you may be a little bit challenged in that regard. Because if you address talent in the historical sense, which is, I just go out because I have a job and I expect people to apply for it and I will pick the best person, that's not really the thing right now, particularly in a warehouse. Warehouses are having labor shortages. And so you have to start asking yourself, what is the reason why I can't keep this staffed? Is it something that I'm doing wrong? First, I would start there. And then if you conclude that it's not, that it's a market-based reality, you've got to get people into your warehouse and actually understand your operation. They're not going to be effective doing that when there's a lot of distance between that reality and kind of where they sit. And invite them in.
Chase, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I love that. And as a sales leader, I think it's something I regularly encourage my team to do is, get into the market on the floor with the teams. I think that's where it all happens, right? But I think I would just add another dimension is, ask your internal teams to talk to your suppliers and say, obviously, a lot of people are talking about labor shortages. How are some of your best customers solving for this? And are you able to help them or not? I think having some marketplace benchmarks, one I think can make people competitive. That maybe if a competitor that you admire or maybe hate is finding progress in a pain point that you're having, that can get your attention. But you got to size it too. You got to make choices. I think some things are slower burns in terms of adoption to decisions. Yeah, we know we need to do this, but it's a huge problem. It's far down the priority list. So I think having a buy-in committee or a group that's interested in this is always helpful. And obviously stuff like use case or case studies or white papers can help too. But I think that friendly competition and how are sort of the market leaders solving for this? If you can get under the skin of what that actually looks like and what people are doing, it can bring theory to a real life example that might be relevant for your specific environment.
Good. Okay, so let's pivot a little bit and talk about alignment. Mike, as technology and automation continue to gain prominence, how do you ensure alignment between people, process, and technology so that adoption is more successful and as least disruptive as possible?
So I would say that there is a world of difference between a 125-year-old distributor taking an approach to that and a public company. right? So if what you want to accomplish is to build big things in your career and move on to the next thing, there's ways to do that through traditional learning and change management, and you can always follow those approaches. But one of the things that I saw extremely well done over the course of the last couple of months is First Supply out of the Midwest, 125-year-old distributor, right? Fifth generation CEO. It's not a project, right? It's a way of life thing, and those big investments have to be managed well, and it's got to be taken to heart. So one of the things that I watch, the team there, they'll present out is the thought that they put into the governance that goes into making sure that they understand what the financial objectives are, making sure that they understand what is the decision-making authority, making sure they understand what was the knowledge authority, and making sure that they put all of those things together in a way that they could progress the program, but that issues got raised to the right place, and that people also understood that this was an important thing for the company, and that people were expected to buy in, contribute, and be part of it. And it was one of the I would say more interesting professional moments was attending kind of the dedication ceremony there, where they opened up that warehouse in that DC, and they just kind of talked through what they did to get there and the care that they took in making sure that they understood the change that was in front of them, what it was going to take for people to either buy in or buy out, and then what it was going to take to make sure that the decision making and the escalation paths were there. And I think the people that line that up and take the care to get that right on the front end are the people that are going to do a better job with that, because the arm's length nature of, well, IT is going to do that, or he's going to do that, or she's going to do that, or I hope they get it right. That sense of ownership is that really important thing. And so when you see that at the top and you see that permeate into a articulable governance structure, you've got a project that at least is heading for some reasonable and rational conversation and discussion.
So, Chase, Mike's mentioned change management and governance structures. I know you have a lot of experience with that as well. Do you want to add anything to that in terms of what you see as best practices in those areas?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this earlier. I think you got to treat transformation as a journey, not as a specific project.
Yeah.
Transformation really never ends. I think having a cross-functional steering group is something that's really important. I think leveraging data to help identify either how big this problem is or how much of an improvement you can make. I think being agile. We're in the middle of a very large deployment of a large customer with more than 100 distribution centers and thousands and thousands of forklifts, has continued to pivot how they're rolling out. They've ultimately chosen to speed up, which is great, but it's been because of some learnings and some adjustments that have been made, cross-functionally and with us as a supplier partner to help launch faster. But it's been a constant change. I think you got to be agile, but I think being data driven and having more than a singular stakeholder, I think is very important. Stakeholder group, and by that I mean a functional area. Cross functional is very important. And I think over communicating the why and the how. Humans are generally change averse, but change is also inevitable, especially in the business world. So, why are we doing this? How long is it going to take? If there are early successes, really championing those and celebrating the wins.
Okay, so Chase, let's stick with you and get into the meat of the actual technologies themselves. So, if you look at a list of emerging technologies, AI-driven decision support, robotics, IoT sensors, digital twins, analytics. Which do you think offer the most immediate value in warehousing and logistic operations, and which ones are more long-term bets from your perspective?
Yeah, I think certainly my the premise of my company is IoT sensors and kind of data highway. So that's my answer will probably lean that way. But I think the technologies that deliver the most immediate ROI are the ones that help unify data, improve safety, and enhance human performance. I think the long-term winners will be interoperability. Obviously, the advent of AI agents, I would even say personally, is going super, super fast. And it's, in fact, I think there's some chat bots that are in this meeting on behalf of some attendees, taking notes for people, which I think is pretty interesting. But lots of efficiency gains, happening really all around us. I think those are where I would answer the question.
Yeah, it's funny. I spoke to a crowd in the UK and a crowd in the US in the last couple of months, and when I asked how many of you have heard of agentic AI, very few people raised their hands. So I think the technology is ahead of the understanding at least in the distribution executive marketplace right now. Um, Mike, what technologies have you seen that deliver measurable gains in throughput, accuracy, safety, and or cost reduction?
You know, it's a function of metric, right? So I think a lot of times people can adopt new technology or not adopt new technology, sometimes just for the sake of doing it.
Right.
And then I think there's increase in efficiency, and then I think there's error reduction. So I think, to me, most of these technologies, as they're expressed and as they're written, do what they advertise, and they're good bets based on the metric that you want to improve. If you're looking at increasing some level of throughput, then yes, AGV, AMR, good, go at that. If you're looking at increasing accuracy and you've got scanners in your system, go with that. But just make sure that what you're doing has a metric behind it, that the money you're spending is meant to improve that metric, and the way that you're going to go about it is the way that you want to go about it. And then make sure it aligns with the way that finance operates. Right now, efficiency for the longest time was a function of one human hour of time. And now it's not anymore. And we're redefining that labor unit. So for me, that question's kind of a tough one, because I see people trying to answer the wrong thing sometimes without knowing the metric they're trying to solve for. It's just automation's cool, let's do that. And I think the people that are doing this the best are the people that are really looking at the metrics that drive their operation and trying to figure out how to improve those metrics through technology. The people that I don't think are doing it well are people who are curious technologists that just want an experiment for fun. And so I think all the technologies are real. I think all the technologies are improving things. I don't think people are adopting them always the right way with a purpose behind.
Yeah. Chase, do you want to add anything to that, or you want to take next question?
No, I mean, I would say I really like the answer. I think I've seen that, kind of lived that on both sides. To be honest, I think you got to be choiceful. There's the world is moving really, really fast. And I think in order to be choiceful, you actually have to know the why and what the value is. I think otherwise it just becomes a hobby or a side project that just doesn't go anywhere. So I think that was spot on.
So, Chase, what are the biggest technical operational challenges? I mean, we talked about change management in the context of human beings, but what are the biggest technical or operational challenge you encounter when integrating new systems? Is it, automation, analytics, disconnected assets, when you're addressing a legacy warehouse infrastructure?
Yeah, and I think one of the ones that we run into all the time, that it's a big challenge, and also an area where we've really been able to help customers, unlock some serious ROI, is around fragmented siloed data in lots of different systems. I mentioned a large deployment that we're in the middle of. The unlock we were able to provide was we took this customer out of paper for access control checks and automated it really quickly. So connected back into, who's authorized to use this piece of equipment, have they passed this, certain required training, and took what was a very highly manual, days old system, bridge systems together, and serve value up in a way that was, very tangible in terms of a realization of value. I think some additional pain points that we see in beyond just the fragmented systems. In our world, we deal with a number of different OEMs of forklifts. So I think there's some proprietary ecosystems that can also be a barrier for us. We've just lived with all these different fiefdoms for a long time. And I think overcoming those and knocking those walls down. Certainly, there's some infrastructure challenges around modern connectivity that can be barriers. And you obviously have the workflow disruption of just change. I think to the prior points around cross-functional alignment, having that can happen both in sponsoring projects and navigating change, but also in changing processes. I mean, generally in a manufacturing or distribution environment, processes are very robust, very ingrained, and slow to change. So if the processes and the change aren't aligned, that can be a big barrier. And the last thing, and this is really change fatigue or low adoption. We talked earlier about some of the ways to kind of overcome that through alignment, celebrating wins, and such. But that can be a barrier in terms of just getting the type of momentum that you need to help drive a step in your transformation journey.
Cool. Hey, Mike, how do you address data architecture, system interoperability, change in workflows, et cetera?
I'm sorry, can you ask that one more time? My
Yeah, yeah,
apologies.
yeah. How do you address data architecture, system interoperability, and change in workflows when you're doing implementation?
I think I think sometimes our exuberance gets ahead of our understanding, and we look at something and it shines and we want it right now, and we don't realize what it actually takes to get from where we are to where
Right.
that thing is. And I think that and sometimes I think that our understanding is too important in the context of what should be exuberance, and so kind of getting right, understanding where you are right now and where you want to be, and putting the right level of importance on each thing is a helpful thing. Because if I look at certain data architectures that are in place, make it a lot harder to implement one piece of technology versus another, and sometimes people just don't care. They're like, okay, well, we're going to do it anyway. Making sure that data has the ability to be extracted and packaged and sent from one operating application to another operating application, and the ability to be consumed. And I think people early on in software implementations, we spent so much time just trying to get a process in place and capturing a process in the system. And I think we're still conditioned to do that. I think we've lost our way a little bit and are just getting to it on the importance of data, and the importance of data being clean, being right, being ingested correctly, and then the decisioning that sits next to that, and getting that clean and making sure that not only is the data available to the system that needs it, but then that conclusion can be available to the next system that needs it. And going through and designing that, one of the things that I actually really enjoy about Infor, if you look at our iOS and the way that we put that together, we do a pretty good job of making sure that data can move from one location to another. And it's something that we consider a lot here, as opposed to just simply the boxed off code that's working with whatever data it has. And so I think taking a step back and just making sure that you understand, my reality, my architecture, my data, it's clean and ready, or it isn't. And then taking the time to say, well, what's it going to take to get from here to here so that I can start this? It's frustrating a lot of times to an organization that sells software, because nobody wants that put in front of their program. And also, your program's not really going to go well unless somebody puts that in front of your program. So just taking the time to step back and just ask yourself, is our current reality important enough to better understand? Is what we want to do something that we want to commit to above our current reality? And kind of balancing those two things together. I think that conversation tends to be one of who's the most important person in the organization. And I think it needs to change to what is that metric we can accomplish if we do this, and how do we kind of give each other some grace in the conversation.
All right. So I want to bring up automation now. And Chase, I'll direct this at you. Now, I think of warehouses as closed box or open box. All right. And this is just something I haven't heard other people talk this way. But, if you look at like typically food distribution, pharmaceutical distribution, everything master distributors do, the boxes never get open in the warehouse, right? They're moving full boxes and full pallets. And you can use the drones that fly around and count things, because they don't have to try to count individual pieces in the box. They can just count barcodes, right? And you have a tremendous opportunity for automation, because forklifts can just come or robots can just come and pick up full boxes. But then if you're in what I call an open box warehouse, which is like an HVAC distributor, a plumbing distributor, electrical distributor, you've got 10,000 open cases in your warehouse or more, and you got to pick onesies and twosies out of them. And the automation challenge is much greater, and the automation opportunity, I argue, is much lower. But I'm increasingly seeing these human hybrid environments where, right, like the robot brings the box to the picker rather than the picker going to the box, right? So this it feels like to me like the automation is evolving rapidly in warehousing, and also the robots are getting better, right? They do have these ones that can pick individual pieces now. So long prelim, but how do you approach the trade-offs or think about the trade-offs between full automation and hybrid human machine operations? How does the distributor know what level of automation and what type of automation makes sense for their particular environment?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a fun question to think about and to research because I mean, robots are cool, right? Who doesn't like to follow that? Anytime I go to trade shows or visit customers, that's usually where my attention goes. It's fascinating stuff. I'd say automation is a spectrum, not an on-off switch. And I think the word that you used, Ian, hybrid, is what we see as being the most relevant for the majority of cases. Now it's changing. Where automation tends to have um, the most success is around highly repeatable, low variability tasks, moving pallets, zones, repetitive transportation. Depending on the sophistication of the warehouse, that lands somewhere differently on the spectrum for every client. Um, and even for the most sophisticated, everybody has some type of exceptions with mixed fleets, human beings on the floor, dynamic conditions where you need some type of human judgment still to interface. So I think, at least from our perspective, we see automation having the most success truly in a hybrid environment, and I think being choiceful um, and adopting change at kind of the right pace for your company is you got to challenge yourself, but also uh, take on what actually makes sense for your operation.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, are these the kinds of things, and Mike and Chase, both of you? I mean, if I'm not sure, because you guys have more expertise, because you see so many different warehouse environments, and the distributor just sees their own. I mean, is this the kind of problem they can bring to you and say, hey, before I can't do I don't even have enough information to do an RFP. I need your help
Yeah.
to develop the RFP. Do you guys get people coming to you with that? And what do you do for them if they approach you with that kind of request? Mike, you want to start?
Happy to. I mean, look, the first warehouse I walked was Duckhead almost 30 years ago, right? And I watched things rolling down a conveyor. And, walking into a warehouse with a VLM where it's bringing boxes to you and you're picking it, it's almost like witnessing the invention of fire. And where people are trying to go from what I walked in 30 years ago to where they are now, there's people far more qualified to put together an RFP for that. And we've got business partners that can help with that in terms of how do you want to lay out everything and how do you want to drive levels of efficiency. We can put anybody in touch with some really good business partners that are
Right.
super qualified to just look at that and accomplish that. From my perspective, we have the ability to be kind of that central brain that
Yeah.
operates all of those different decisions and conclusions that are reached. And in the interim, and we had a partnership announced today for individuals that would be perfect for that as well with Longbow Advantage. And there are people that are absolute experts in looking at what is the automation, what are the metrics you're looking to drive, and putting
Yeah.
that together. And we're more than happy to provide the system that's the brains and thought processes that kind of connect everything. But putting that together in an RFP, part of that too, just in general, is once you enter an RFP process, welcome to Crazy Town, because everybody is going to want to be part of it. Everybody's going to have a perspective. Everybody's
Right.
going to move things around. So you know, getting together with a supply chain consultancy organization that you trust to help you
Yeah.
through that process and avoiding some of the wackiness of just being at the center of everyone's attention to figure out how to get through that decision process quickly but effectively.
Yeah. And you mentioned uh sort of the end-to-end capabilities of Infor. But how, I mean, do people generally do a good job with end-to-end integration, from yard to dock, from fleet to floor? And or are there opportunities in most distributors to improve the effectiveness of that end-to-end integration to improve responsiveness and agility? Mike?
Oh, there's all sorts of opportunity to improve that. I think the there there is no kind of magical light switch that you flip that
Yeah.
moves data perfectly for applications that have been designed a little bit apart. And so is there always room to improve? I don't know anybody that if you honestly pulled them aside and said, did you have a perfect integration, would go, yeah, I've got a perfect integration.
Yeah, sure. Right.
And so I think there's always opportunities to improve. I think where you start to have to figure it out is, how do I look at all of the outputs of these different systems in one place
Yeah.
when I have a single decision to make that relies on both of these systems, and where you can put together good collection points across that data, where you've got control centers, where you've got different applications that allow you to view what's important in your transportation system and what's important in your warehouse system, and to make a decision that spans both of those things together. That's where I think people wish they could do a better job in terms of displaying that data to somebody that needs to know it. The movement of that data is always going to be something that you're going to have to consider out in that program, and the display of that data is something you're always going to have to figure out in the program.
Yeah, and so I mean, this starts getting to the area of how do you measure success too, right? So Chase, and we're not going to be able to cover everything in our discussion outline, so I'm going to jump ahead to KPIs and metrics. So when you're looking at an implementation, how do you measure success? And I know it changes case by case, but give us some general explanations if you can. I mean, what are the KPIs and metrics? Is it throughput, accuracy, safety, incidents, labor costs, sustainability? I mean, there's a bunch there. How do you think about it? What's the scorecard look like in many cases?
Yeah, I mean, I think you gave part of my answer, but I think yeah, I mean, look, I think it is. I mean, it certainly varies by the client and their environment. I think typical problems we solve are reductions in safety with specific incidents or with risk,
Yeah.
which we're able to capture through telemetry incidents. Um, Efficiency gains. So, and some of that's through some, what does the current environment look like today? How long is this manual process taking you? And, what is it after? And able to calculate an ROI that way. Utilization in terms of, do I have enough? Do I have too many forklifts? Why can I retire some of these? Can I take time out of inefficiency out of the process? So, yeah, so I think yeah, I mean, those are typically the types of things that we solve for. Yeah, so I don't know
Okay.
if I answered your question. You threw me off guard by answering my question. Was there a back end of your question by the
Yeah, sorry about that. No, I mean, I think, the, I mean, it's always going to be some blend of the same
right?
variables, right?
Yeah,
And, I guess it depends on the priorities of the customer, but it probably also depends on who's driving the project, right? Is it coming out of finance or
right.
operations or
I mean,
sales?
and I would say it really, and discovery is usually not a one time exercise, but
Yeah.
when we talk to new clients or existing clients that are looking to expand, you really need to do a lot of homework together. Like, be open with your vendor partners about the pains that you're trying to solve for. I think you're going to get a much better result in terms of and hopefully if they're doing a good job, they're really getting underneath the hood of your organization and pinpointing what things are costing you today. What does the as is process look like? And it's whether it's inefficiency or lost hours or forklift utilizations or fatalities or near fatalities, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean those are. But I think if you're not open with that and you treat transformation projects as just invoices, I think you'll struggle to see the type of the ROIs that your business is looking for.
And Mike, a lot of times this requires that you pilot new technologies, um, before you commit to an enterprise-wide rollout. So how do you make the decision about, hey, I'm ready to embrace this technology enterprise-wide versus, hey, I'm just going to try this in one location to see how it works. what are the kind of the guardrails you put around, risk tolerance, ROI thresholds, organizational readiness?
Ian, you ever stood in a warehouse that was shut down because someone did that wrong?
I have not actually. No, no.
So
Sounds like
I
you
used to have
have.
an interesting. I used to have an interesting job. It was whenever this went horribly wrong, it was to recover. And one of the things that I always saw that kind of led to that was the introduction of too much code and too much process all in the same day, where if something went wrong, you had no idea what it was. You couldn't find it. And if you've never sat down across from a CEO who you can see tears coming to this human being's eyes because the ultimate outcome is going to be shutting down a company because you're
Yeah.
almost in violation of your bank covenants and you can't get funding anymore to move product.
Right.
That's a real thing.
Yeah.
And part of what takes people there is this aversion to the word throwaway. And I think one of the first things we need to do is we need to look at the word throwaway in the context of integration and refer to it as transitional. Sometimes a transitional period of time is just what you need to make sure you preserve your business. And it's not a waste of an extra $25,000 in integration. It's a bet on transitioning effectively so that you're not putting your entire business at risk. And I always ask myself, and I always kind of go through a checklist with people like, do you understand what you're putting at risk when you turn this on? Okay.
Right.
If everything went sideways, would you know how to isolate the problem? And then, what is your organizational appetite here for oops, for getting it wrong, and what is foregone on the opposite of all that? What value are you foregoing by rolling this out a little bit slower, and should you accelerate? And if you can kind of get to an understanding of those things, you've got to leave yourself the space to isolate a challenge during a go live, particularly if it stops shipping, particularly if it goes across departments, and particularly if it goes across applications. And I've watched people turn on too much all at once, only to not have any clue how to revert back, nor to find the little gremlin in their system that's running around and causing all the chaos in their organization. Yeah. And so for me, it's just a question of, do you really understand what can go horribly wrong here if you turn on all that much all at once? And do you want to put together a mini PR story that can drive adoption so everyone can raise their hand and go, me next? And I think getting those things right on the front end are pretty important before you just look at it and say, we're going to turn everything on day one because we want to save $25,000 in integration. I think that's a terrible, terrible idea.
Got it. Okay. And on the human side, Chase, how do you handle the workforce implications of major transitions like this?
Yeah, if it's all right, I want to jump back.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, add to what Mike shared. I'd say pilots are very common in the warehouse environment. I think they make sense when workflows are either complex or culturally sensitive. And I'd say with what we do, a lot of times like pedestrian proximity cameras are really an emerging tech that a lot of warehouses are interested in. We really need to define success criteria of a pilot. And, once the pilot is, either completed or far enough along, only then can you measure the ROI and choose to scale. So I think the first gate would be, is this a complex internal process? Is it culturally sensitive, crossing lots of different departments? Hey, we've got people, camera technology generally is a little sensitive to culture. We might want to pause or go slow to make sure we've got this proven out. I love Mike's comment on sharing the success story. That's super important. Change is, human beings are generally change averse. So success stories and believing in the why and the how are both really important elements.
Got it. Okay. All right. And then okay. Yeah. All right. So do you want to add anything to the workforce implications, or is that kind of?
Yeah. I mean, I would just, workforce is really an important dimension, of course. I think simplifying training, reskilling if needed, if processes have changed very significantly, and using real life insights to help build trust rather than resistance. But I think keeping the why and the how at the forefront is I'd say super important.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. So this will probably be a wrap-up question. We'll see if we get any more from the audience. But so I'm going to ask you both, looking ahead, which next generation innovations do you believe will be most transformative for warehouse and logistics over the next decade? So if you put on your, your future vision goggles and look ahead over the next decade, what are going to be the most transformational next generation innovations? Mike, you want to start?
I think there's what is hardware, and I think there's what is software. And I think that as you start to see processor and disk space, what it is today, what you can do in software is pretty incredible. And if I look at how far we've come from Google down to GPT, you're going to start to see some of the very same things occurring in the warehouse, and people are going to open up agentic cockpits. People are going to open up one line questions that they ask a system. They're not going to have to go diving into an order. They're just going to ask a question. And then the other piece of that, right? So the simplification and speed of response with accompanied by analysis is going to be the first piece. And the second piece of that is using that kind of technology to give you career paths to people. As we talked about kind of hiring and retention. With GPT levels of technology, you can actually promote people faster. So if you think about it, used to take X number of years or even decades to move from this level here to have the requisite knowledge required to be a leader in the organization and run a team. And now you don't, because all that knowledge is actually contained here, and you can just hit a button and have it summarized and handed to you. You can actually start making career decisions to advance people a little bit faster and earlier in their career in the leadership roles, and use that competitively where other people don't, because all of that knowledge that used to exist in the human mind is now just a button that you hit at the beginning of the day, and you can run an entire work shift startup just from a single button. And so we've been focusing on some of that about how can you take years and years of knowledge and just make it a button and allow people to action that much earlier in their career. And so I think from a software perspective, a lot of the things that you're seeing with AI and its ability to comprehend information now, the other thing I think that we're going to see is that we have done a really great job with heuristics and models. And also in about 10 years, we're going to look back and be embarrassed about how short we came when we thought that we were all competitive and my model's better than your model. And we're going to watch AI do this for 10 years, and we're going to be a little bit embarrassed about our history. And I'm looking forward to that. I think that I think we're going to see some pretty interesting advancements when the knowledge of what can be comes out of AI, and we put that back against what we had coded originally. So I'm pretty optimistic and excited about what's going to come in the software world over the course of the next 5 to 10 years.
Excellent. Chase, well, you want to address the hardware or a little of both?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think AI co-pilots I think would be at the top of my list.
Okay.
Autonomous material handling and connected electrified fleets. I think all founded in a requirement to have strong data foundations. I think those are really I'd say the keys. But yeah, I think transformationally, and we're at the I'd call it the beginning of the AI takeover. It's fun. It's fascinating. It's fun, moving fast, and I just think the word journey is what we try to keep in our minds, because it truly never stops. I think that, the for companies that are thinking about this, the smartest investments are typically in people, culture, and system interoperability. Building a workforce or evolving your workforce into a culture that welcomes technology advances. I think it's, realistically, we're probably all in different places with what that looks like in our own environments, but tech is only moving faster and faster. And, the sooner it can be welcomed as a strategic foundation rather than AI is going to take over. I think that the more successful we'll all be.
Excellent. Okay. Let me, if you guys want to hang on for just a second, I do want to tell the crowd about a couple upcoming programs we've got. So on December 10th, we've got a program called How Mid-Sized Distributors Leverage Technology to Compete. We'll have Jeff Van Pelt from Cognitus and Dan Kamenstein from Epicor on that panel. That's also at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. And then on December 17th, we've got AI for Distributors, a 2025 review and a 2026 preview. That'll be me, my Genius business partner, Jonathan Bine, PhD, and our Genius with LLM's COO, Brian Hopkins, talking about what happened in AI this year and what's coming next year. That's brought to you by Epicor and Proton.ai. So I hope you'll join us for those. Go to distributionstrategy.com to register. But for now, I want to very much thank my guests from today. We really appreciate you joining us and sharing your wisdom with the audience. And to everyone else, thanks for attending. We'll see you next time on a Distribution Strategy Group virtual event. Bye now.
Thank you.